Welcome to Things My Mother Forgot to Mention.
The podcast where we say everything our mothers didn't.
I'm Jan, a trauma therapist and author turned rogue storyteller, here to talk openly about the body, aging, and all the, wait, what? Moments of womanhood.
And I'm Patti, an online business and tech nerd whose purpose is to elevate the voices of women in our world and who doesn't believe in taboo topics. Things My Mother Forgot to Mention is the podcast for every woman who's ever said, wait, why didn't anyone mention this to me?
Join Jan and Patti, two outspoken, curious, outrageous women, as they dive headfirst into a messy, magical, and often WTF realities of aging, health, and quite simply being a woman.
From rogue chin hairs and vaginal thinning
to mental health, perimenopause, and scalp cancer. Yes, really.
Nothing is off limits. It's funny, it's raw, it's real talk your mother definitely skipped.
Let's get into it. Today is a topic that you chose, and I figured you could share a lot, Patti, about sex.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if that I'm the one that chose it originally, because when I looked at the list, you had sex and sex positions and lubricants. So,
okay, you got me.
But I was like, this sounds great. I'm happy to talk about this. But I did choose for it to be the now conversation. So, yeah, I don't even know. Where do we
when did your mom forget to mention these things to you?
When did she forget to? She still to this day has forgotten to mention. I've talked about it with her, but it wasn't something that we ever really talked about. So here's kind of an important thing, and this is going to be, I guess, a trigger warning a little bit. So this is an important thing to share with regards to my sexual story journey. So I have a history of sexual abuse through my childhood. So what that means is, and I'm not going to be sharing about that in particular or anything like that. I'm sharing it because I think it's important to understand that that is what informed and affected my sexual journey, right?
Yes.
And so I think it's important to share that because there are lots of people that have had that kind of experience,
Yes.
and that it does affect how they grow and that sort of it. So I just want to say that that's what shaped in a way part of my journey. So
well, if I put on my therapist hat,
yeah,
which I will do for just 1 minute, and that is that, and all the clients that I've ever worked with, the ones that have sexual abuse, they've either responded to it in their adult life by being sexually anorexic, or they have responded to it by being sexually way too open and too experimental.
right.
And so those are the extremes. And I know it's a very sensitive topic to just start doing that healing journey, but I totally get it. I appreciate you saying that right off the bat.
Yeah, yeah. And it's true. I mean, growing up, that was always something I always heard too, is that, oh, if you've experienced this, you're either going to be really promiscuous or you're going to be a prude, right? Those are like the terminology and the things I heard kind of growing up. If I had to choose one, I leaned a little more prude in that way. But for me, it wasn't, it was a discomfort with people in my physical space, right? So for me, although I did like, I think at the first time I kissed, like made out with somebody, I was maybe like 13 or something.
Yeah.
But I didn't actually, yeah, have sex with somebody like full all the way until I was 24.
Wow.
Yeah, because it took me a while.
That makes total sense.
Yeah, it took me a while to trust
To
somebody.
trust, to feel safe, and
Yeah, and which we kind of mentioned a little bit in our episode on relationships. I wasn't like like a natural beauty just because I was. I mean, I think I'm cute, but like, like
pat yourself in the back for
it's
that
all
one.
that matters. But like, I didn't have a body that was considered super attractive or anything, right? So I wasn't somebody that was being sought after necessarily. So it was easy for me to just sort of, hide. And I had a really pretty, my best friend. All the guys wanted my best friend, so I was like the, sidekick kind of person.
Right. Yep.
It fit really well for me. So my experience with sex then Not really until I was in my 20s. So, but I think because of my experience and kind of the history that I had, it's not something my mom wanted to talk about or thought to talk
Right.
about maybe,
Right.
because it probably felt uncomfortable for her,
Mhm.
to talk about it. And then additionally, so this is, I don't know if this is a TMI or not, but I'm doing it anyway. So, but related to kind of my history, when at one point, you have to go through a lot of like exams and things when you have like
Right.
reported and whatnot. And so at some point, they're like, well, you have a lot of scar tissue, so it's going to be incredibly painful when you have sex the first time. And
Oh,
we suggest you
wow.
have surgery first. And I was like,
What?
what? Yeah,
What?
that's what I said. So then I was kind of afraid to have sex anyway. And so, I mean, I didn't get the surgery. I went for it and it was fine, quite frankly. Like it was probably the same as I hear everybody else say. So
Mhm.
thankfully, I didn't go through the whole process, but that kind of
Oh,
added this layer of
wow.
like, ah,
Who said that? A
it was a
gynecologist
gynecologist. Yeah.
and probably a male doctor, right?
I think it was a woman actually. They were
Really?
really good about making me go to women when I was seeing
Oh,
doctors for
good.
my
Uh-huh.
comfort. Yeah,
Mhm.
as a
That's
kid and,
great.
and teenager. So, but yeah, right. It was really fascinating that they were just like, you'll probably. I'm like, well, I don't know if you're like trying to teach abstinence
Yeah,
here or what.
never heard that before. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really interesting. So, so by the time I kind of went all the way, I really didn't have
Phrase. I'm going all the way
all the
to.
way. I'm giving my flower away. Um, it was with somebody that I had been friends with. He was actually my roommate. And we ended up being in a relationship for 12 plus years after that. But um, I will say we had an open relationship. So I did get to explore a little bit with other people. And
Mhm.
he kind of wanted that because I think he was like, I don't want to be your only person. And now we're together and this is the first time you're exploring. And I was like, cool. But I pretty quickly was like, nah, I'm a monogamous person. So
Yeah.
that was a lot of download of information for you. But that's sort of
Well,
it for
yeah.
me. And I just sort of, yeah, TV, I guess, friends.
Yeah.
I learned.
For me, I mentioned this before when I was growing up, is that my mom, of course, scared the bejeebus out of
Yeah.
me because she said, her first child died and God was punishing her because she had sex before marriage.
Hmm.
So when I remember, and maybe we'll talk about this in our puberty and coming of age uh, podcast, but I remember once I started my period, my dad was really watching me all the time. Whenever I'd bring a boyfriend home, he'd listen on the intercom whenever we were down in the basement. Yes,
Really?
yes. And whenever we were on the porch and the boyfriend was saying goodbye to me, he would be peering out of the window, making sure everything was all right. So my mother, and between my dad doing that, it set me up for, I'm not going to have sex until I'm married.
Yeah.
And I was the pretty girl, the homecoming queen, who
Yeah.
everybody was after, but they called me Iceberg because
No.
yes, it was because my last name, of course, is Bergstrom, and
Right,
they
right.
called me the iceberg. So I got a reputation for that. Not the loose girl in the high school. It was iceberg. So that kind of carried me through till I got to my first marriage, and I think I'm in total denial, and maybe I'm dissociating, but I don't remember anything about that as far as having being sexual with my first husband. So
Really? Like you don't
really
remember
weird.
your first you don't remember losing your virginity?
No, I don't. I was probably
Really?
dissociated or something.
Yeah.
It was
Huh.
like a nightmare or something for me. But again, that's a whole nother story as to how I married this guy who was a minister and what I was doing. Anyway, but once I got divorced, then I was kind of out on my own and I was a flight attendant. And so everything was available to me. So, I experimented with all the different people I'd met and having three boyfriends and who I lived with, each one for 2 years, learning things. But now it brings me up to getting married when I was 37 to my current husband of 35 years. And one of the things that we've done in it's been an up and down thing when you have kids and you're going through perimenopause and menopause, your sex really changes. And so one of the things my husband came up with, which was really interesting, was going to a tantra workshop. Have you ever heard of
Oh.
those?
Yeah, I've heard of them. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had never heard of it, and we went to it, and I would say I would give it a thumbs up. I was a little nervous about going, had a little anxiety,
Yeah.
but it taught me a lot about, rather than people telling me or experimenting and trying to figure it out, they they teach you everything about anatomy and positions
Mm.
and everything. So that was a good learning experience, and uh, that's kind of currently, still that's what I mean by using different kinds of what is it? Not they're lubricants,
Yeah.
and that lubricants that are pH sensitive to the vagina is really
Yeah.
important, and how to not have painful sex. And then of course, birth control is a whole nother area that you start
Yeah.
looking at. But
Yeah.
that's kind of been my foray of learning about sex because my mother never mentioned anything
Yeah.
about being sexual because
Yeah.
my mom and dad were really into keeping track of me and making sure I didn't do that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. I had such the opposite experience in that way of like I mean, I kind of was hanging out with some boys and stuff when I was in high school a little bit here and there. And there was one guy that I was hanging out with a lot, which I mean, for all intents and purposes, he was kind of my boyfriend. And but my mom didn't really care. Like we would be in my room with the door
Really?
closed and yeah, we would make out and stuff like that a little bit. But she didn't seem to bother.
Now, were your parents divorced, Patty?
Yeah, my parents
So
got
you were just
divorced when I
living
was
with your
very young.
mom.
Yeah, so I was living with my mom. She was a single mom at that point. My
And
father,
you had siblings, sisters, or
I
brothers?
had brothers. So I had two brothers. One was living with me, and at that point, one was in the Navy. So I had my own
Okay.
room, but
So
my
you were
mom
the
and
only girl.
yeah, I've always been the only girl.
Wow.
Yep. Yep,
Wow.
yep. Middle only girl. Yeah. So I don't think I just think she wasn't, I think she was really busy, kind of providing. And also, I don't think maybe she wasn't worried, which she didn't need to be, obviously, because I still wasn't
It
ready,
was
even though he
right.
was pushing and I was like, I'm good. Like, no,
Wow.
because it just was, for me too much. But it wasn't. So, like, when I, started being with my long-term partner that I had been with for a long time, he kind of after we were together for a little bit and I got over like in the beginning I had like flashbacks and things like that and he was really amazing about all of that at the beginning and so we would
Sure.
have the lights on and things like that until I got used to it and then I was like by that
That's
point I was
great.
like yay sex woohoo why did I wait so long so
Right,
at that
right.
point I was good and then he got like a little book that was like a book of positions and things he's
Oh,
like
sure.
try and I was like cool so I was able to start exploring with him that way. And we always had, which I really love, like a really strong communication and very open communication about all
Hmm.
of that.
Hmm.
So I felt, because even in the beginning, I was so still sheltered myself in that way that when we first had sex, like I couldn't even say the word, like we had sex, like I think
Right.
at some point he was like,
Much shame associated
a
with it.
lot of shame. Yeah, a lot of shame. I'm still in
Ridiculous.
therapy right now dealing with that. Like currently, that's what,
That's what our parents need to do for us.
right?
They need to have a fund for our therapy.
Totally.
Are you saving for
Totally.
your son's therapy later on in life? I know. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh. Well,
Yeah.
you and I have that in common. I have two brothers, and I'm the middle girl. I'm the only girl.
Oh, that's
Same
so
thing.
great.
I
No
didn't know
wonder
that.
we get along so well here.
Now there you
Yeah,
go. That was
yeah.
it.
But yeah, so we learned a lot, just like I learned a lot just by experimenting and talking things through. And we went so I was in San Francisco, and they had this really amazing woman-owned sex store in the neighborhood I
Oh
lived
yeah.
and so we went there and they would hold workshops and things. But first, we would go there together and look at toys and various things and just try stuff. And so it was really fun because it was like a really safe, open way for me to learn that. I mean, like my shame around sex now is different. It's than just sex itself. And
Hmm.
so because I got through that kind of with him, which was really phenomenal, it was so fun just to learn about that. But here's how much I didn't know about
Oh, here we go.
my anatomy. So my partner, he grew up with his mom was a nurse and his grandmother was a nurse. So he was familiar with and he was,
Mhm.
was very familiar with everything. So some conversation I was having with him and I was talking about how I peed out of my clitoris. And he was like, "Wait, what?"
No. That's
Yeah, no, that is not correct. And
right.
so my first boyfriend that I was having
Figured out
sex
what that
with
was.
had to tell me what my anatomy was because
Yes.
my mother had told me that is something she had told me was that I urinate out of my clitoris. And so, and I remembered it because I was talking to my brother when he was like home from the Navy and was off playing and having a good time or whatever. And he said something about, I don't know, boundaries weren't great at that point. And he was saying something about going out with these women. I was like, well, you know, they pee out of that, right? And he was like, they do? And I was like, well, that's what mom told me. I don't even know if he believed me at that point or how long he held that, but I sure did until my boyfriend told me otherwise. And then I learned
Aha.
that we
So
had
your
sex.
mother forgot to mention the right thing there.
Yes, she sure did.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I know. I have a friend who I was talking to about that. Her name was Susan, and she says that that's she squirts out of that. And I'm like, wow, Susan. So Patty, isn't that great? See, that's the Tantra workshop. They give you the anatomy. They have
Yeah.
pictures, they have books, they give you films, and it's not porn. It's
Right.
actually helpful information,
Educational.
which
Yeah.
is really I'm really in favor because porn is not great. I think it objectifies people and it makes it look like a really false sense of connection.
Yeah. It's not realistic in most cases. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's just
Yeah.
not. Nobody is built like that and has a penis that big. Anyway,
No.
well, oh dear. Well, it's all about trying to define health. And
Right.
I think that that's one thing I would like to mention in this whole episode of sex and sexual positions and finding out about that you didn't pee out of your clitoris. It was
Right.
actually it's considered lubricant, isn't it? Is there a name? I can't remember what they call that.
When you naturally, like, oh, your natural lubricant, you mean?
Yes,
I don't know what that's called. Yeah.
I can look that
You
up
should look it up.
because it's
Yeah.
in some of my books that I have.
Well, why don't we pause and look it up right now so that we can give the
Okay.
proper information? So,
Yeah,
like,
let's do it.
what is female? I should do this on a safe search. Female natural lubrication. So, well, it's not giving me a name exactly. So here's what it says. Female natural lubrication is a combination of bodily fluids, primarily mucus from the Bartholin's gland,
Yep. Hmm?
cervical mucus, and a plasma transudate, I don't know what that is, from the vaginal walls. This lubrication is crucial for sexual arousal, comfort during intercourse, and reproductive health. These glands are located near the vaginal opening, and they secrete the mucus that helps lubricate the vaginal walls. There you go.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's interesting because would love to go upstairs and see my book because I remember talking to my friend Susan about it and she said that that happened to her too. And I thought it was something else, but called
Are you
something.
talking about the squirting?
Yes, the squirting.
Oh, see, now that's different. So this is just like when we're ready to go, that's how that happens, right? So
Hmm.
what is it? What happens? Because it's not urine. A lot of people think
No,
that
no,
it's
it is
urine. That's
not
a
urine. No,
misconception.
it's not.
When you my Google history, y'all, is gonna be real great. What happens
Maybe we
when
should
you
do it on
squirt?
Chat GPT.
That's gonna help. Okay, so squirting in the context of sex, I hope everybody loves this episode. Squirting in the context of sexual activity refers to the involuntary expulsion of fluid from the urethra during
Mhm.
arousal or orgasm in some individuals with vulvas. Um, the fluid release is sometimes called female ejaculation, while research
That's it.
suggests just female ejaculation.
That's what it is. It's
Yeah.
female
It's not
ejaculation.
urine. It often
No.
contains components of urine and
Yes.
possibly secretions from glands underneath the urethra. But it's just considered female ejaculation.
Yep. There
Yeah.
you go. Now, I have been going to this pelvic floor PT, physical therapist, and she is amazing. And it's all hands on. And
Yeah.
so she's working with because I have a couple incisions on my body, like more than a couple. And so she works with the fascia underneath, so on my belly. Like in most massage therapists don't really touch, areas like most, let's say, hopefully most of the massages don't touch other areas.
Right.
And she also works internally. So she goes inside of me and she can identify each muscle, all the muscles that go into the pelvic floor. And she said that, that has a lot to do with the muscles that are used during sexual intercourse and orgasm.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so it's fascinating because it's so important. I was just thinking, gosh, we're so complex.
Yeah.
Sex is not just, I mean, I think when you're younger, it was just sometimes it would be, when I was younger, I'll say, not you. It was this, experience you'd have. You'd meet somebody and you thought this was the person and you couldn't, keep your hands off of each other.
Right. Yeah.
And so you didn't really think about like what does really causes this and creates that and how do you, enter this and enter the penis and all that stuff. And now as you get older, you learn more about it and it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It's it's pretty complicated in some ways,
Yeah.
all different parts. My husband still can't figure out all the different parts that come with the vagina. He's like, now, what are you talking about? Now, what's the thing that, where the baby comes out? And I go, well, that's the uterus. And then there's the cervix, and that's what opens. I'm always trying to explain to him different things. And of course, he forgets. So, anyway.
Yeah. Well, I guess if you don't have it, but yeah, but it's complicated. There's a lot of moving parts there. And yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, well, look at that. I mean, the reality being like how many people don't know like that I didn't even know my own,
Yeah, right.
anatomy. And thankfully I was with somebody who had mother and grandmother as nurses and were from, or
Yeah,
maybe some other way he would have gotten there, but that knew that, right? That knew
yeah,
the anatomy. And so I
yeah.
think, that's a really good thing. But
So So maybe we should think of resources. So resources was, I mean, like I said, that Tantra, I mean, there are different, you have to be careful of the Tantra workshops you look at and
yeah,
get the history of who's teaching them. My friend Kim, who's a therapist, she knows a lot about different workshops that are Tantra based. And David, the two people that visited us. And I was thinking of for you, you said you went to a store. So how do you pick a good store or a
yeah.
place that would give you good information rather than, in the back of, a matchbook or something?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think researching who owns the store, I think when you can find female owned, that usually tends to mean that they're a little more conscious of things. Being in
Sure.
San Francisco, it was a little easier to find
Yep.
those sorts of resources. So, but especially if you're in smaller towns and that sort of things, I think it's, looking for those types of places and just researching who owns them and learning a little bit about them. However, I will say that, and it's been a long time since I've really frequented them, but there are a lot of online shops too. Adam and Eve
Oh,
is a
yeah.
very reputable online source where you can get whatever you might want or need. Even Amazon nowadays, you can order lube and vibrators and things
Hmm.
like that
Hmm.
if you want
Hmm.
them. So, but yeah, I would say don't be afraid because there's so much information out there, and because people are more and more less afraid of speaking about sex. Therefore, they're less afraid about, like, I had a friend who they actually reviewed sex toys and got paid to review
Oh,
sex toys. And
wow.
they'd get them sent to them and then they would try them out and they would write reviews. And so there are people out there that are doing this and that are sharing that information. So don't be afraid to read reviews if you're looking for something and try different things. Here's the other thing I want to say, and hopefully this is okay to talk about, but we're already talking about all the things. But like I think orgasms is something that a lot of people and my mother didn't mention.
Oh my
And I
gosh,
think a lot
sure.
of people don't. And I mention this because very recently I was talking to some friends of mine, and one of them was noting that she cannot orgasm through vaginal intercourse alone. And she's like, I know it's really weird, and my sister can't either. And I was like, that's actually not weird at all. The reality is that the percentage, the majority of women cannot
Hmm.
orgasm through intercourse alone. Like they need
Yeah, I
clitoral
wonder what
stimulation.
percentage that is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's high. It's high.
Mhm.
It's I think probably like I should look it up, but it is definitely a high percentage. The majority of women. So I think there's those ideas, and porn gives that idea, right? Sometimes
Oh,
that looks
yes.
like women are always just coming everywhere, and it's so easy to have an orgasm when
They're
nobody's
screaming
touching
and
or
yelling
doing
and all that
anything.
stuff. I know.
Yeah, and so I think there's a lot of misinformation when it comes to that, and that everybody is different with what
And they
gets them
start feeling
there.
shame because there's something wrong with me. So, Patty, can we just pause for a minute?
Yeah,
Can you look that up? I'd love to know the percentage of
yeah.
women.
Wow.
What?
Uh, that's bonkers. 18% are able to orgasm from vaginal intercourse alone. 1/8. Yeah.
That's it?
According to a study from News Medical and the National Institute of Health, that's reputable.
Wow. Huh.
Another third of women prefer clitoral stimulation to reach orgasm during intercourse, right? So then there's people who need both, who like
Yep.
both, and
Mm-hmm.
some who are like, doesn't matter, just clitoris only, doesn't matter, that's what's going to get me there. So whatever else is happening. So some people need both, but 18% of women
Wow.
can orgasm from intercourse, vaginal intercourse alone. So it's
Wow.
very low. So I think this is one of those things, and people joke about men not knowing where the clitoris is and all of that.
Right.
But that's a real problem
Yep.
when, here's another thing is that historically speaking, there were cultures that believed that female orgasm was required for conception. The idea was that both men and women had to orgasm when they were having sex in order for their fluids to mingle together, and that would create conception.
Oh, really?
And over time, as science got better and they began to understand the physiology of women's body, they, in the like late 19th and early 20th century, kind of stopped focusing on female orgasm as a necessity for conception and started focusing just on the physiology of conception. And it became this idea of like an orgasm is really fake or is just not something that's necessary. So why should we deal with it? Right. Or
Right. Mhm.
then women started faking it because they felt bad
Yep.
because I can't orgasm without anything. And so I'm wrong. So I better fake it. Um, so I think that's a really big
Right. And
thing
they,
that's important to remember.
right. And they never get pleasure out of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it can be a very pleasurable thing and
Yeah.
experience, actually, and very intimate. And, Pia Melody used to always say, she goes, the problem with today, and this is her, like 10 years ago, she said, is that everybody treats having sex with someone like a handshake. That
Mm-hmm.
it's this wham bam, thank you, ma'am. And
Right.
rather than really, and I think that's what we're kind of focusing on now is it doesn't need to be pornography. It doesn't need to be faked. It needs to be an intimate relationship where two people work to mutually talk about what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and how do they learn about it, and how can they create that kind of practice in their relationship. It's not just about, going along and doing a one-nighter here and there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That I think really cheapens sex, but some people prefer that.
Yeah. And
That's my
that's fine
opinion.
too. Yeah, to each their own.
That's
I
fine
don't think,
too.
but I agree. I've learned over time, like I said in the beginning of my relationship, I had sort of an open relationship. And so I enjoyed kind of seeing like, okay, well, that's now I'm like, woo, let's try this out and see what it's like. But pretty quickly for me, I recognize that I am, and I believe there are people who aren't, and that's fine, but I am a monogamous person. Like
Yep.
energetically for me,
Yep.
it takes so much energy to deal with just me, let alone another person. And then on top of that, if I were to have like it just doesn't work for me, and that's okay. And
Right.
so it for me is something I
Well,
like.
this is where I'm putting my therapist hat on again. Sorry
Yeah.
about that, but I've worked with couples that are polyamorous.
Mm,
Okay. And I am also, I could never be in that kind of arrangement. And
Right.
these people really did. They had certain limits and boundaries and how they
Mhm.
set it up. And they had one, two, three, and they spent 2 days with this person, 2 days with this person, and they worked it out, to a certain extent. And that's fine. People
Yeah.
can do that. I also am monogamous, and
Yeah.
I think that the work when you're polyamorous is harder because you're
Yeah.
dealing with, someone spending time and you're talking about boundaries. And if you don't have boundaries, it gets crazy and all your
Yeah.
material from the past comes up. So monogamy is my way too, and I think that it's more challenging in a relationship like of 35 years. Okay, how
Yeah.
do we keep this alive and
Mhm.
fresh? And I certainly have struggled with that. And I was just thinking before we end, one of the other resources is really important, and a friend of mine used to work there, Planned Parenthood.
Yes. Oh,
Planned
yes.
Parenthood. They have books, apps, educational
Hmm.
videos, and they're all tailored
Yeah,
to help young adults and teenagers even to really
absolutely.
understand what's going on. So
Yeah, important to note with that that not to get political, but the percentage of abortion work that they do is extremely, extremely tiny. And the majority of the work that Planned Parenthood does is so important. I didn't have insurance in San Francisco for a very long time, and I went to Planned Parenthood for all of my
that's
pap
great.
smears
Yeah.
and my everything. And
Yeah.
so like it huge, huge. Yeah, Planned Parenthood is a phenomenal resource, and you can trust anything that they're putting on their website for
Mhm.
resources. But I think don't be afraid to read books. Don't be afraid to talk about it with people you feel safe and comfortable talking about it with.
Mhm.
Because I think that that's one of the topics I think in our society that is one of the most taboo topics that I think is one of the most dangerous to be taboo because it makes us feel more shame and it makes us feel
Same.
more alone and crazy. But we all enjoy sex, or not the vast majority of us enjoy sex. It can be healthy, it can be enjoyable. You can do all sorts of things and explore and do whatever, but like
Exactly.
there's so much to it. And I think the more we're comfortable to just talk about it, the better it is for
The
everybody.
better it is.
Yeah.
Exactly. For sure.
All right.
Well, gosh, I think we've exhausted this for now. And thank you
Yeah.
for another great repartee, I guess is what this is.
Thank you, Jan. Thanks for talking about sex with me.
Okay. Thanks, Patty. You too. Thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like what you've heard, please share it with friends, subscribe, and leave a review.
And remember, information shared on this podcast is not medical advice. If you have a concern about your physical or mental health, please seek support from a professional.
If you have a story you'd like to share about things your mother forgot to mention, you can apply to be a guest.
We'd also love to hear a quick 90-second thing you've learned in your life.
You can find links to both of those over at our website at
thingsmymotherforgottomention.com or in the show notes.
Thank you.